The countdown reads 47 minutes and 12 seconds when I first noticed that no one on Earth has said a word. My name is Sir Rusk von Driel, third-tier translation officer of the Corvette Ascendancy, and I am standing on the observation deck of the Miracell, the command ship of Grand Marshal Oziath Cowron. Below us, wrapped in white cloud and blue ocean, sits the planet the natives call Earth. We arrived 6 days ago. We have spent those 6 days cataloging cities, counting warships, measuring the pathetic scatter of orbital defense platforms that ring this world like broken teeth. By every metric the Ascendancy uses to judge a species' readiness for conquest, Earth should already be finished negotiating the terms of its own surrender. Instead, there is only silence. I should explain what the silence is supposed to sound like, because I did not understand it myself until today. In 4,000 years of expansion, the Ascendancy has perfected something we call the Herald's Hour, 60 minutes given to any world we intend to absorb, a courtesy extended not out of mercy, but out of certainty. We are so confident in our strength that we allow the conquered the dignity of choosing their own submission. Every world before this one has used that hour to beg. Some have used it to weep. A handful, in the early centuries, tried to fight, and the historical record of what happened to them is taught to every cadet as a cautionary tale about the cost of pride. No world has ever used the hour to say nothing at all. Grand Marshal Cowron stands at the center of the deck, hands folded behind the small of his back, watching the countdown tick downward on the crystal display above the forward window. He is not a cruel man, by the standards of our people. He has told me once, during the long transit here, that he takes no pleasure in what the Herald's Hour does to a species' spirit. He simply believes it necessary, the way a surgeon believes a wound necessary before it can be closed. Officer Driel, he says without turning. Confirm the broadcast reached every frequency this world uses. I check my console. Confirmed, Grand Marshal. Radio, satellite relay, undersea cable, even their old analog television bands. The message has been received on every continent. And their response? None, Grand Marshal. He nods slowly, unbothered. I have translated the Herald's message myself, converting our formal declaration into the crude, beautiful chaos of Earth's 1,000 languages. I know exactly what was sent. Your world has been measured and found capable of contribution to Ascendancy prosperity. You have 1 hour to accept the terms of integration. At the end of that hour, this fleet will act with full authority to secure your compliance. This is not a threat. It is an inevitability. Choose how it arrives. I spent 3 years assigned to the Ascendancy's listening post in this system before the fleet arrived, absorbing human broadcasts the way a sponge absorbs water. Their news programs, their arguments, their strange songs about love and defiance sung by people who had never once needed to defend anything larger than their own pride. I thought I understood this species. I thought their loudness, their endless bickering with each other over trivial disagreements, meant they would be loud now, in the moment that mattered most. Instead, nothing. Not a single frightened transmission. Not one plea for mercy. At 40 minutes, a young sensor technician named Vosk breaks the silence on the bridge with a short, disbelieving laugh. Grand Marshal, their fleet. Look at their fleet. I look. Arrayed in a loose, almost careless formation around the planet's outer defense perimeter sit some 60,000 vessels. To any Ascendancy analyst, it looks like exactly what a dying species assembles in its final hour. Too many ships, too little coordination, weapon signatures barely registering above dormant. Vosk says what half the bridge is already thinking. They've given up before we even fired a shot, Grand Marshal. Look how they're just drifting. I do not laugh. Something about that number gnaws at me. 60,000 hulls is not a number a frightened species assembles carelessly. It is a number that takes years of industry, coordination, and purpose to build. A civilization does not spend a decade constructing 60,000 vessels only to leave them drifting like an offering. I request a deeper scan. Cowron grants it, more out of habit than genuine interest. He is watching the countdown, not the fleet. The results trouble me more with every passing second. Life support readings across the human formation are minimal. Weapons are powered at levels too low to threaten a scout ship, let alone the Miracell. Whatever these 60,000 vessels are, they are not manned for a fight. I bring this to Cowron directly. Grand Marshal, I believe the human fleet may be unmanned. A screen, not a force. He studies the readout for a long moment, and something almost like respect flickers across his expression, respect for a species clever enough to attempt a bluff, nothing more. Then their desperation runs deeper than we believed, he says. Let them hide behind empty hulls if it comforts them. It changes nothing. The hour will end as it always ends. I want to agree with him. Every year of my training tells me to agree with him. But I keep thinking of the human broadcasts I studied for 3 years, recordings of old wars fought against impossible odds, speeches given by leaders who told exhausted, outmatched nations that surrender was simply not a language they spoke. I dismissed those recordings as performance once. Every species postures before it kneels, my instructors taught me. 4,000 years of conquest has never once proven them wrong. Except this silence does not feel like posturing. It feels like patience being spent deliberately, the way a card is held rather than played. At 33 minutes, a technician near the gravimetric array reports faint distortions at the edge of the system, far beyond the human fleet, beyond even the outermost moon of this world's neighboring planet. The readings are small enough to dismiss as debris, a comet fragment, background noise. I ask her to check twice. Both times the answer is the same. Something massive moved through that region and then vanished from every sensor we possess. I report it to Cowran's second-in-command, Fleet Captain Isara Thorne, Corvette by birth, though her name carries the clipped precision of an officer who has spent decades unlearning sentiment. She listens, considers, and dismisses it as an unrelated cosmic event. We are not here to chase comets, Officer Driel, she says. We are here to watch a world decide whether it wishes to survive. I do not argue. I have no proof. Only a feeling that has grown heavier with every silent minute since the countdown began. The feeling that the empty fleet beneath us is not surrender but a curtain, hung carefully to keep us watching the wrong stage. At 28 minutes, the first human transmission finally arrives. Not a plea, not a surrender. A single sentence, repeated 3 times across every channel we monitor, translated instantly by my own systems into words that silence the entire bridge. This is Earth. We heard you. We simply had nothing to say to a countdown that was never ours to accept. Cowran turns slowly toward the display where the words glow in patient, deliberate translation. For the first time since I began serving under him, he does not respond immediately. He simply reads the sentence again, as if searching it for a hidden clause, a trick, some grammatical trapdoor that would make its meaning smaller than it is. Fleet Captain Thorne orders the technicians to trace the transmission's origin, expecting to find it broadcasting from one of the 60,000 drifting hulls, some final act of defiance from a doomed crew. The trace comes back scattered instead, bouncing across dozens of relay points on 3 continents, deliberately untraceable. Whoever sent it wanted us to know it had been sent, and wanted us to have no idea from where. At 21 minutes, gravimetric distortions begin appearing again, not one this time, but a dozen, clustered along the far side of the system's asteroid belt and near 2 of Earth's smaller lunar outposts. The signatures are stronger now, unmistakable, the kind of disturbance caused by something enormous moving with total control, appearing only in the instant before it vanishes again. I feel the shape of the trap before I understand it fully, the particular stillness of a held breath in a room, right before someone finally exhales. I bring my analysis to Fleet Captain Thorne, keeping my voice low. Captain, I believe the visible fleet is a decoy, deployed to hold our attention. I believe a second force has been maneuvering into position around our formation for the length of this entire countdown. For the first time, something close to real alarm crosses her face. She orders an immediate perimeter scan, not toward the planet, where every sensor on this ship has been trained for 6 days, but outward, into the dark behind and around our own formation. The results take almost 2 minutes to compile. It is the longest 2 minutes of my life. When the data resolves, the bridge falls into a silence deeper than any I have heard since this mission began. Along a wide arc behind our fleet, hidden until now by the gravitational shadow of a dwarf planet and by shielding technology the Ascendancy did not believe this species capable of producing, a second fleet becomes visible. Not 60,000 empty hulls this time. Perhaps 4,000 vessels, far fewer, but radiating power signatures that dwarf anything we measured from the decoy screen in front of the world. These ships are crewed. These ships are armed. And every one of them sits with precise, deliberate purpose along the flanks and rear of our formation. Grand Marshal Calron stares at the display for a long moment, his composure cracking only slightly at its edges. "Impossible," he says, quiet enough that only those of us nearest him hear it. "No species advances this quickly. No species hides a war fleet of this size without a single leak, without one failed transmission ever reaching our listening posts." I think of 3 years spent studying human broadcasts for exactly this, for any hint of true military capacity, and finding only the fragile, outdated technology that would make an ascendancy fleet feel safe approaching. I understand now, far too late, that we were never watching a species prepare to lose. We were watching a species rehearse a performance, built patiently across years, engineered to convince us this hour would end exactly the way every Herald's hour in ascendancy history has ended. At 15 minutes, Fleet Captain Thorne turns to the Grand Marshal, urgency finally cracking through her formality. "Grand Marshal, I recommend we abandon Herald's hour protocol and move to defensive positioning immediately. Whatever this second fleet intends. We will not break protocol for a bluff," Calron says, though his voice carries less certainty than his words demand. "Reinforce shields to standard combat levels. Nothing more. Continue the countdown." I want to point out that nothing about the last 30 minutes resembles a bluff. But rank holds my voice in place, and I return to my console instead, watching the countdown fall through 10 minutes, then 5, then the final 60 seconds, during which the entire bridge seems to stop breathing at once. The countdown reaches 0. For a fraction of a heartbeat, nothing happens. And in that fraction, I allow myself the foolish hope that perhaps the Grand Marshal was right after all, that this was simply a species running out the clock in one final act of stubborn pride before finally sending the surrender we came here to collect. Then the hidden fleet moves. Not in the chaotic rush I would expect from a smaller force facing overwhelming numbers, but as a single organism, sliding into the exact seams of our formation where our shield coverage overlaps least effectively. Seams that should be nearly impossible to identify without intimate knowledge of ascendancy architecture. The first strikes land with a precision that should not be possible from a species we cataloged as primitive 6 days ago. Not aimed at the thickest armor of our largest vessels, but at the narrow junctions where shield generators connect to hull structure. A vulnerability our own engineers consider theoretical, so difficult to strike that no enemy has ever managed it in 4,000 years. Thorne shouts orders across the bridge, her composure finally breaking. "Return fire. Full spread, target their lead vessels." The Miracel's own batteries answer, a wall of energy aimed at the nearest human ships, and I watch, disbelieving, as those ships scatter with impossible speed, their formation dissolving and reforming in patterns that seem to anticipate our targeting solutions before we finish calculating them. I understand then why the 60,000 decoy ships mattered beyond simple distraction. Every scan we ran against those hollow hulls during the countdown, every attempt to map their weaknesses, fed directly into whatever process the true fleet used to calibrate its own defenses in the final minutes before the countdown ended. We spent an hour teaching our enemy exactly how we intended to fight them. Ship after ship in our formation suffers the same pattern. Precise strikes to shield junctions and propulsion systems, disabling rather than destroying. Crews left alive but powerless, hulls crippled but intact. It would be easy to mistake this restraint for mercy. Some small, stubborn part of me, still clinging to ascendancy pride, wants to believe that is exactly what it is. But watching the calm, unbroken control behind every strike, I understand it is not mercy. It is a choice, made by a species with more than enough power to choose destruction instead, and enough discipline not to. "Status of the eastern flank," Calron demands, his voice raw in a way I have never heard from him. "Collapsed, Grand Marshal," comes the reply. 14 vessels disabled. No losses reported. All 14 drifting without power. The western flank reports nearly identical news. An entire arm of our formation rendered helpless without a single vessel destroyed. I understand, listening to these reports accumulate, that this is not merely a victory. It is a demonstration, delivered with surgical restraint, and I begin to suspect we are about to learn exactly what it is meant to prove. The tactical display confirms what I already sense. The Miracell, along with a handful of remaining escorts, has been herded, slowly, deliberately, over the course of the entire engagement, into a position isolated from the rest of our fleet, surrounded on nearly every side by human vessels that have stopped advancing entirely, holding a tight, patient perimeter around us. I bring this to Thorn immediately. Her face pales as she studies it herself. Neither of us speaks for a long moment. A new transmission arrives, not the earlier message this time, but a new voice, translated instantly into careful, measured Corvette by my own systems. The voice carries no trace of the fear or desperation the Ascendancy has come to expect from every conquered world before this one. This is Fleet Commander Adiz Okoye of the Terran Combined Defense, speaking directly to Grand Marshal Oziath Kauron. Your flagship is isolated. Your remaining formation has been disabled without significant loss of life on either side. A choice we made deliberately and could have made differently. We are prepared to discuss terms. I would consider that offer carefully, because it will not remain open indefinitely. The bridge falls into a silence complete enough that I can hear my own pulse. Kauron stands motionless, staring at the display, and I understand we have arrived at the exact moment this entire engagement was designed to produce. Not the Ascendancy's destruction, not even its defeat, precisely. Something else, a negotiation offered from a position of genuine strength for the first time in 4,000 years of Ascendancy history. Open a channel, Kauron says finally, quiet but steady. I will speak with this commander directly. The image resolves on the main display. A woman, younger than I expected, uniform simple compared to the ceremonial weight of our own bridge, posture calm in a way that feels earned rather than performed. Grand Marshal, she says, I want to start by saying that nothing about today was intended as cruelty. Every strike our fleet made was calculated to disable, not destroy. Your crews are alive. Your ships, though damaged, remain largely intact. That was a deliberate choice, and I want you to understand why before we discuss anything further. Kauron's jaw tightens. You speak as though restraint earns gratitude, he says. You have humiliated an empire 4,000 years in the making. We didn't do this for gratitude, Okoye replies, something thoughtful rather than triumphant crossing her expression. We did it because we studied your history the way you studied ours, and we learned that every world the Ascendancy has ever approached was given exactly one choice: kneel or be destroyed. We wanted to show you there was a third option, one your empire has apparently never needed to consider before today. I watch Kauron absorb this. Around the bridge, officers have quietly abandoned their stations, listening. The ordinary business of running a warship forgotten in the face of a conversation reshaping rules our entire military culture has operated under for longer than any of us have been alive. Explain, Kauron says at last, one word carrying more weight than a full sentence could. 4 years ago, your listening posts began intercepting our broadcasts, Okoye says. What you didn't know is that we noticed your listening posts almost as quickly as you noticed us. We spent those 4 years learning everything we could about the Ascendancy, your history, your conquests, the pattern you follow with every world you approach. We learned your empire has never once faced genuine resistance, because every species you've encountered either surrendered immediately or fought back with technology so far beneath yours the outcome was never truly in question. We built our entire strategy around one fact. You have never had to adapt, because nothing has ever forced you to. I feel the truth of it settle over me with an uncomfortable weight, understanding now why the decoy fleet worked so precisely, why the hidden fleet's accuracy felt almost impossible. It was never impossible. It was simply the result of a species studying its enemy with a patience the Ascendancy has spent 4 millennia never needing to develop. What do you want from us now? Kauron asks, his voice stripped further of the authority that has defined every word he has spoken since I first served beneath him. What terms do you intend to demand? Okoye's expression shifts, something that might be called satisfaction, though it carries no cruelty. We're not interested in conquering your empire, Grand Marshal. We want 3 things, and I think you'll find them more reasonable than you expect. She raises a finger. First, Earth remains independent, permanently, with no future demand for surrender or integration. Second, your empire ceases all contact with this system unless we initiate it ourselves. And third, this is the part one suspect will surprise you most. You carry a message back to every world within your empire that has ever surrendered to the ascendancy out of fear rather than genuine agreement. We want them to know resistance is possible. We want them to know exactly what happened here today. I watch Calran's face as this final term registers, and I understand immediately why she saved it for last. The first two terms are almost generous by the standards of what the ascendancy typically demands of conquered worlds. The third is not generous at all. It is a strike aimed not at our fleet, but at the very foundation of how the ascendancy has held 4,000 years of territory together, an empire bound as much by the belief that resistance is impossible as by any actual military dominance. You asked me to plant the seed of my own empire's unraveling, Calran says slowly. I ask you to tell the truth, Grand Marshal. Okoye answers. What your empire does with that truth is entirely up to you. But I think you already understand that a truth, once spoken, cannot be unspoken again. Every world under your control will learn what happened here today, whether it comes from you or from us. We'd simply prefer it come from you, with whatever dignity that choice allows you to keep. The silence that follows stretches long enough that I begin to wonder if Calran will refuse entirely. Choose destruction over the humiliation of carrying this message home. I watch him closely, and I see the exact moment something shifts behind his eyes. The recognition that refusal offers nothing but the certain ruin of what remains of our fleet, while acceptance at least offers the chance to shape how this story is eventually told. I accept your terms, Fleet Commander, he says finally, each word visibly costing him something. Earth remains independent. The ascendancy withdraws and makes no further contact unless invited. And I will carry your message home, though I make no promise of how it will be received. That's all we ask, Okoye says, and something in her tone suggests genuine respect rather than triumph. We'll begin releasing your disabled vessels immediately. Your crews will have propulsion and shields restored within the hour. We ask only that your fleet depart our system without further incident. The channel closes. The bridge falls into a silence unlike anything I have known in my years of service. Officers standing frozen at their stations, processing an agreement negotiated not from desperate surrender, but between two forces that have just proven themselves, however briefly and however painfully for us, something close to equals. I am pulled from my thoughts by a quiet request relayed through the ship's communications system, addressed specifically to me. Fleet Commander Okoye has asked for a brief private channel with the officer who translated the Ascendancy's original ultimatum. The connection opens. Okoye's face appears, calmer now than during her exchange with the Grand Marshal. You did the language work on that ultimatum, she says. Not quite a question. I confirm it. Uncertain what she wants from someone whose only role in this engagement was rendering threats into words her people would understand. It was good work, she says. Genuinely well done, considering how strange our language must sound from the outside. I wanted you to know that, because I suspect you're one of the few people on that ship who actually try to understand us, instead of just cataloging our weaknesses. I do not know how to answer this. My hesitation must show, because she continues without waiting. I read what we could find of your service record, she says. 3 years studying our broadcasts. That's a long time to spend learning about a people you were told would simply kneel the moment they saw your ships. I imagine that gave you a different picture than most of your colleagues had. I consider my answer carefully before speaking, more honestly than ascendancy protocol would normally permit. I began to suspect, over those years, that your people would not respond the way our doctrine predicted, I admit. I did not understand how deep that difference ran until today. She nods, as if this confirms something she already suspected. That's more self-awareness than most conquerors manage, she says. I hope your empire listens to what you learned here, even if I suspect it won't be easy for them to hear it. The channel closes. I return to my station as the bridge begins the slow work of coordinating our withdrawal. Disabled vessels gradually regaining power exactly as promised. Crews reporting in with a mixture of relief and quiet humiliation I suspect will follow this fleet for the rest of its existence. Grand Marshal Calran stands at the center of the bridge, posture still upright, still carrying the outward shape of his authority, though something fundamental has clearly shifted behind his composed expression. As our fleet begins its retreat from the system, I look back one final time at the small blue and green world we arrived believing we would conquer within a single hour. I think of the 3 years I spent studying this species from a distance, quietly building and understanding none of my superiors thought worth taking seriously. I think of the 60,000 empty ships that drew our attention exactly where humanity wanted it, and the hidden fleet that waited behind them with a patience I am not certain the ascendancy has ever demonstrated in its entire long history of conquest. I think most of all about the message Calron now carries home, a message that will eventually reach every world under ascendancy control, whispered first in quiet uncertainty before growing, I suspect, into something far louder. I do not know what will become of the Empire once that message spreads, whether it strengthens us through the lesson learned here, or begins the slow unraveling of 4,000 years of unquestioned authority. What I know, watching Earth shrink slowly behind us as our fleet withdraws in something far closer to retreat than victory, is that the galaxy has just learned something it will not soon forget. There is a difference between a species too weak to resist and a species patient enough to wait for the exact moment resistance becomes overwhelming. Today, for the first time in the long history of the Corveth Ascendancy, we finally learned which one we had found, and that when we gave them an hour to answer, they had already decided, long before we ever arrived, that the only reply worth giving was the one we would not see coming until it was far, far too late.